in the highest court in the state. That's basically a lawyer. You take cases and you decide cases. So if you have some questions that you need to fill out your paperwork, raise your hand right now. Yes.
The age of 17 to 18 to own a car.
Right. You have to be 18 to own a car. So when you're charged with a crime, that's something in the law where you can lose your freedom and go to prison. A civil offense is where you're suing or getting sued by somebody for money. So if you get in a car accident and you hit somebody and they say, hey, you ran that red light and you injured my arm, they might sue you for the damages and the pain. That's a civil offense. A civil offense would also be you entered into a lease, an agreement to rent an apartment, and you didn't pay the rent. Then the owner of that apartment could say, I'm going to sue you for damages for the rent that you didn't pay. So civil is for money, somebody's suing, or you're suing somebody for money. Criminal is where your freedom is taken away and you can go to prison. Is that clear?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
In a criminal case, you have the right to have an attorney represent you. And the government will provide an attorney for you. They have to. In a civil case, you don't have the right to an attorney. You can hire one, but the government doesn't have to give you one. Is that clear?
Yeah.
Okay, so some questions. And you had some medical issue. The doctor's gonna need consent from you to look at your past records so he or she could treat you. But if anybody in this classroom said, hey, I wanna look at your medical records, no, they can't do that. And if you don't, do you guys know what a guardian is and a conservator is?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so when you turn 18, or even before you're 18, if you have any concerns about being able to make decisions or protecting yourself, you can get a court-appointed guardian or conservator to protect your rights. So if you needed a guardian, you could go to court and get a guardian, and one of the things that guardian would do is make sure that nobody could get access, get a hold of your medical records, unless it was a doctor, or you agreed to it. So they would protect your rights. So a guardian helps you with personal, everyday decisions about medical treatments, about, decisions you make, anything about life. A conservator, also you can get a court to appoint a conservator. A conservator makes decisions about your money and helps protect you in money decisions. So if you need somebody to help in terms of how to spend any government checks you get or any money that you get, a conservator can be appointed to help you make good decisions and protect your money. Country for 50 years.
That's good.
And I doubt there's gonna be a draft any in the future. I sure hope not. So the fact that you're registering for the draft doesn't mean you're gonna be drafted. I had to register for the draft when I turned 18. They didn't draft me. Okay? Yes.
Can you go to jail if you hurt someone when you're 18?
Yes. So here's a big thing for you guys to understand. Before you turn 18, the law considers you a minor. Minor is just a legal word for somebody who's under 18. When you're under 18, with the exception of a few crimes, you go to juvenile court. You're treated as a juvenile. Everything is in juvenile court, and when you turn 18, your record is cleared. So that's what happens in juvenile court. When you turn 18, you go to adult court. It's different. And in adult court, if any record you have stays on your record. And you can go to prison. As a juvenile, you can't go to prison. You can go to juvenile detention facility, but you don't go to prison. The point being is, it changes when you turn 18. And you might, don't anybody raise their hands, but you may have committed a crime when you were 18, you went to juvenile court, and the way you were treated is very different from the way you're gonna be treated if you do it when you turn 18. When I was a trial judge in Yuma, I would have minors that would commit crimes, and I would go down to juvenile court, and I would put them on probation and deal with them as juveniles. And then I would go up to the Superior Court, would be adult court, and sometimes those kids would grow up, they turn 18, and I would tell them, this is different now. This isn't like it was in juvenile court, so it's much more serious, and you're not in juvenile court anymore when you turn 18. Is that clear? Yes. Okay, yes.
Yeah, I have two questions.
Okay.
What made you want to become a judge?
Here are the people we think you should consider governor, and then the governor picks one of those people. That's how I became a justice. Does that make sense?
Okay.
Yes.
What age is required to join the Supreme Court justice?
You have to have practiced at least 5 years. So, to become a judge, you have to go to undergraduate, you have to go to college, that's 4 years. Then you have to go to law school, that's 3 more years. And then you have to practice law for at least 5 years. So if you go to college, let's say you just go straight through school. You go to college when you're 18, if you graduate when you're 22, then you go to law school, that's 3 years, you would be 25, and you have to practice at least 5 years. So probably the earliest age you could become a judge is 30. Hold on, Sean. Yes.
What does a typical day look like for you?
When I was a judge,
Yes.
I would get into the office, I would read the cases that we were gonna hear that day. I would go into court, I'd hear arguments, I'd make rulings, decisions on those cases, I'd issue written orders. If it was a criminal calendar, if I was dealing with criminal cases that day, I might advise people of their rights. I might set the case for trial, or I might sentence them. And then some days I would have jury trials, where people would come in for a jury trial. So that was a typical day. You were here last time I came.
Yeah.
How are you?
Good, how are you? Okay, so my question is, what happens if you break house arrest at the age of 17 and 18?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear the question.
What happens if you break house arrest at the age of 17 and 18?
Well, again, if you're 17 and they've got you under house arrest, like electronic monitoring where you're supposed to stay in your home, then that would be considered a violation of your probation, and you'd have to go in front of the juvenile judge. If you do that when you're 18, that would be a violation of your adult probation, you'd have to go in front of the adult court judge. And the consequences could be, the judge might say, well, I'm gonna put you back on probation. Or the judge could say, no, I'm gonna take away your probation, you're gonna go to prison. So the consequences are very serious as an adult, and they're serious as juvenile too, except you don't go to adult prison. And the police book you into the jail. Then you're gonna remain in the jail until the court releases you. And the way the court releases you is, it will set bail or conditions for you to get out. So what a court will do a lot of times is, you're gonna have to post $500 or $1,000 to get out. Or the court might say, we'll let you out, but we want you to be supervised while you're out. You're gonna have to report to an officer 2 or 3 times a week to let them know what you're doing. If you post bail, you can post $500 on your own, let's say, or you can get what's called a bail bondsman, and you can put up a car or something, and he'll post the money for you. That's the way bail works. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Can you drink alcohol when you're 18? How old do you have to be? So, if you go in and buy alcohol at Circle K and you start drinking it, you can get arrested. If you ask somebody else to go in and buy it for you, they can be arrested. So, at 18, You're not allowed to drink alcohol. When you turn 18, if you have illegal drugs, you can be prosecuted and go to prison for that. If you have a prescription for some type of medication, that's okay. But if you don't have a prescription for that medication, if you're 18, that's a violation of the law. So make sure all the drugs that you may have, if you've been prescribed, there's a prescription. A doctor has told you to take them. In other words, if somebody says to you, oh, I heard you ran out of your medication, I have some extra pills here, don't do that. It's a doctor that's got to prescribe it. So keep that in mind. When you turn 18, if you enter into a contract, you're responsible. So we talked about when you're under 18, you're not, but when you turn 18, let's say you get a credit card. And some of you guys, you're already getting these offers for credit cards in the mail. They see you're 18. You might get 10 offers, MasterCard, all these things, Citibank. If you get that credit card and you spend $5,000 on it and you don't pay it, then they're gonna come after you. And what they're gonna do is, they're gonna get a judgment against you, and they're gonna try to collect that for you. So any property you own, if your wages at your job, they're gonna try to take that money from you. In other words, you're gonna be responsible for any contract that you make when you turn 18. Credit cards, you buy a car, you buy a new TV, you buy a new gaming console, you get a big contract with Verizon or Sprint for a phone, and you run up a big bill and you don't pay it, you're responsible for it now, not your parents, not anybody else. And they're gonna collect that money from you in any way they can. And if you don't have the money right now, they're gonna take that judgment and they're gonna do what's called recording the judgment, and they're gonna wait until you have the money to pay for it. Not now, 10 years from now, 20 years from now. So that's something that happens when you turn 18. You have to be very careful, guys, about your relationships with people. When you are 18 and you have any type of intimate relationship with somebody under 18, that's a crime. That's a crime. And so, if you're 18 or 19 and your boyfriend or girlfriend is 15 or 16 or 17, that's against the law. You can't do that. You can go to prison for that.
So let's repeat that again. So for example, if you are 18, you're a senior, say you're graduating this year, and you are dating somebody who is a junior. That is what he is talking about, and they're under 18. So that is what he's talking about, okay?
Yes.
So what happens, let's say that we're both 17, and then my birthday is before theirs, so I turn 18, but they're gonna be 18 in 3 months. Like, does that make a difference, or is it still an adult with a minor?
That's a good one.
It is, that's why I had to make sure you guys understood.
I'm sorry.
What?
You have to be very careful. Look, you have to be responsible in your relationships with people. You have to be responsible in your dating, and you have to be aware of the law. When you turn 18, it changes for you. You cannot date somebody who's a minor. You cannot do it. Just as your teacher said. If you're a senior and they're a junior, no. It's against the law. And it goes beyond that. Even if you're both under 18, you have to have consent to touch a person. Do you understand that? In other words, you might think somebody likes you, and so you might want to grab them and kiss them, for example. Well, maybe they didn't want you to do that. So you need to understand, you don't touch somebody, you don't assume anything unless they let you know it's okay.
Justice Gold, can my mom write a note and give it to my teacher that it's okay for me to date somebody? If I'm 18 and the other person is not 18, can my mom write a note and say it's okay?
Absolutely not.
Okay. Can they write a note and give it to my counselor?
No.
No. Okay.
Can't do it, can't do it. You need to be, look, a lot of this is being respectful of somebody's personal dignity. And it goes beyond even just a dating relationship. If you get angry with somebody and you grab them angrily, that's an assault. Look, you don't touch people unless you know they want to be touched. When you come home, if your mom wants to give you a hug, that's fine. If you're both minors and you have a dating relationship and you understand and you have consent, that's fine. If you have friends that, you understand, you pat each other on the back, that's fine. But you don't know that. And so you might go and you might think somebody thinks it's great that you grab them and hug them. But if you don't know, then don't do it, because it could be considered a sexual assault, or it could be considered an assault. And nobody can do that for you. Nobody, your parents can't write a note for you, your counselor can't write a note for you. As an adult, you are now responsible. You guys understand that?
Yeah.
But what if they have a disability and they like going around hugging people, but that makes other people feel uncomfortable? How does a court see that as far as a disability?
The way the court sees it is this way. The presumption is you're an adult, you may have committed an assault. But it is a defense if you don't know what you're doing. If your disability doesn't allow you to know right from wrong, then it can be a defense. But don't rely on that, because what will happen is this. You grab that person and hug them, and you kiss them on the mouth. You're gonna get arrested for that, or you could, and then you go to court, and the charge is sexual assault. So you're charged with it. Now, you can come forward with a defense and say, no, my disability excuses me. And that may in fact be true. But try to avoid getting the charge in the first place. You don't wanna have to go in and explain that and make that defense. You wanna go in and talk about your disability in front of a judge and all those medical records. Those are private things. You don't wanna have to do that. So, to the extent you can, you need to exercise good judgment and be respectful of other people. Answer your question? Yes, sir.
So what if you're 14 and the other person's 15 and you've been with them for a long time and you've known them for a long time, and the other person turns
It's
18
still kind
and
of
you're
the same
17?
thing.
Doesn't matter.
Okay.
Same thing.
Okay.
You're both minors and consent, and the problem is, if you're under 18, you're not really considered able to consent to a lot of things, so.
Doesn't make any sense. They should
I'm
change that.
telling you guys, no, it's not mandatory.
Mandatory.
But what you might wanna do is, you need to have an ID, because, you're filling out forms, certain government benefits and things, so if you don't wanna get a driver's license, get an ID card, okay? Because you can't, it's not a good idea to walk around with no ID. I will tell you, the best form of ID is a driver's license, so I would encourage you to get it, even if you don't wanna drive. That driver's license, if you apply for a job, government benefits, doctor, anything, medical visits, get a driver's license if you can, but if you really don't, please get a state ID, so you have some identification. It's important to have that. Yes.
What if you are non-driver? Do you just carry your ID, or is it the document that you will have to carry?
Your ID. Bring your ID with you.
So you take it everywhere you go,
Yes.
basically?
Yes.
True.
Yes. And if you're driving,
I don't.
the law requires you to have your driver's license with you. In other words, that's against the law to be driving in your car without a driver's license. They'll cite you for that. They'll write you up. Yes.
Like, what if you have a driver's license, but you have to wear glasses if you're blind?
Well, not mean, not blind, but you have trouble seeing, you have.
Yes.
Well, what it's gonna, on your driver's license, it's gonna say restricted. And on there, it's gonna say needs to wear glasses or contacts. So if you're driving around and you get pulled over and, you know, you're not wearing your glasses, then you could be cited for that. Okay? There's all kinds of restrictions on driver's licenses. That's one of them. Yes?
If you're 18, can you own your shop?
On your what?
If you're 18, can you own your shop?
Your shop, if you have a business?
Yes.
Yes. Absolutely. Yes.
If you want to sell something regardless if you're 16 or above, do you have to have a license for that?
Depends on what you're selling. Are you talking about going on like eBay and selling a pair of
like-
pants or something?
Like paintings or stuffed animals, handmade cars?
I don't know the answer to that, but I think you probably need some type of license. If you're gonna start getting in a business of selling things online, you probably do. But I don't know the specific answer. I'd be very careful of doing that without checking first. And there's a lot of websites that you can go to that talk about selling things commercially. There's also a consumer protection unit at the Attorney General's office. They can advise you about it. So my advice to you is don't do it until you know.
Can you talk a little bit about how driver's license is a privilege and what happens if their parents or someone's letting them drive, they don't have a driver's license? What can happen?
So you do not have a right to drive a car. Some things in this country you do have a right to. You have the right to free speech. You have the right to bear arms, but you do not have the right to drive a car. The state of Arizona grants you the privilege to drive a car. What does that mean? That means the state of Arizona says, if you fulfill these conditions, if you do these things, we'll let you drive. But if you break the law and you don't do the things we say, we can take it away. So if a parent or an older brother or sister says, you can drive my car, they don't have the authority to let you drive the car. It's not their authority to grant you the privilege to drive a car. Only the state of Arizona can. So the state of Arizona is gonna require that you be at least 16, in some instances 18. It's gonna require that you take a written driver's test, and it's gonna require that you take an actual driving test where you show them you have basic skills. But after, if they grant you that privilege, if you're speeding, reckless driving, driving under the influence of drugs or alcohol, the state can suspend it and take it away. If you're under 18, keep in mind, they can suspend your license until you turn 18. Some instances, they can suspend it for 2 or 3 years, so you can lose your privilege to drive as a minor way beyond the ticket or fine that you'll pay. The other thing I want to tell you about driving under the influence, the first time you drive under the influence, if you're convicted, mandatory jail. What does that mean? You have to go to jail for at least 1 day. The second time you do it, it's mandatory 30 days in jail. If you commit a third driving under the influence, it's a felony and you can go to prison. So it's very, very serious. But even for the very first time you commit a DUI, you don't want to have that happen. You want to live your life. You don't want to be going to court for things. You want to live your lives and get jobs and work and enjoy good friendships and your family. Just use your judgment. as best you can. And I will tell you this, if you don't know, then find somebody who's an adult who you trust and talk to them. Your counselors can help you with that. The counselors here are the best at this school. They were working to help you guys in the middle of COVID. I came out of here, so I'm telling you, they're the best. All right, more questions? Yes, sir.
Do it has to be 18 to legally change my first or last name?
Yes, but you can when you turn 18. But to do that, you have to go in, you have to get a judge to order it. Yes,
Do I have to get a driver's license when I turn 18?
okay, what?
Do I have to get a driver's license when I turn 18?
You do, you can get one when you're 16 as well, depending on,
I mean, do you have to?
oh, no.
So it's not mandatory.
No, it's not mandatory to get a driver's
So it's not
license.
being rushed.
But what you might wanna do is, you need to have an ID, because, you know, you're filling out forms, certain government benefits and things, so if you don't wanna get a driver's license, get an ID card, okay? Because you can't, it's not a good idea to walk around with no ID. I will tell you, the best form of ID is a driver's license, so I would encourage you to get it, even if you don't wanna drive, that driver's license, if you apply for a job, government benefits, you know, doctor, anything, medical visits, get a driver's license if you can, but if you really don't, please get a state ID, so you have some identification. It's important to have that. Yes.
What if you are non-driver? Do you just carry your ID or the other document you will have to carry?
Your ID. Bring your ID with you.
So you take it everywhere you go,
Yes.
basically?
Yes. Yes. And if you're driving,
I don't.
the law requires you to have your driver's license with you. In other words, that's against the law to be driving in your car without a driver's license. They'll cite you for that. They'll write you up. Yes.
Like, what if you had a driver's license, but you have to wear glasses if you're blind?
Well, that mean, not blind, but you have trouble seeing, you have,
Yeah.
well, what, it's gonna, on your driver's license, it's gonna say restricted. And on there, it's gonna say needs to wear glasses or contacts. So if you're driving around and you get pulled over and, you know, you're not wearing your glasses, then you could be cited for that. Okay? There's all kinds of restrictions on driver's licenses, that's one of them. Yes?
If you're 18, can you own your shop?
On your what?
If you're 18, can you own your shop?
Your shop, if you have a business?
Yeah.
Yes. Absolutely. Yes.
If you want to sell something regardless if you're 16 or above, do you have to have a license for that?
Depends on what you're selling. Are you talking about going on like eBay and selling a pair of
Like-
pants or something?
Like paintings or stuffed animals, handmade cars?
I don't know the answer to that, but I think you probably need some type of license. If you're gonna start getting in a business of selling things online, you probably do. But I don't know the specific answer. I'd be very careful of doing that without checking first. And there's a lot of websites that you can go to that talk about selling things commercially. There's also a consumer protection unit at the Attorney General's office. They can advise you about it. So my advice to you is don't do it until you know.
Can you talk a little bit about how driver's license is a privilege and what happens if their parents or someone's letting them drive, they don't have a driver's license? What can happen?
So you do not have a right to drive a car. Some things in this country you do have a right to. You have the right to free speech. You have the right to bear arms, but you do not have the right to drive a car. The state of Arizona grants you the privilege to drive a car. What does that mean? That means the state of Arizona says, if you fulfill these conditions, if you do these things, we'll let you drive. But if you break the law and you don't do the things we say, we can take it away. So if a parent or an older brother or sister says, you can drive my car, they don't have the authority to let you drive the car. It's not their authority to grant you the privilege to drive a car. Only the state of Arizona can. So the state of Arizona is gonna require that you be at least 16, in some instances 18. It's gonna require that you take a written driver's test, and it's gonna require that you take an actual driving test where you show them you have basic skills. But after, if they grant you that privilege, if you're speeding, reckless driving, driving under the influence of drugs or alcohol, the state can suspend it and take it away. If you're under 18, keep in mind, they can suspend your license until you turn 18. Some instances, they can suspend it for 2 or 3 years, so you can lose your privilege to drive as a minor way beyond the ticket or fine that you'll pay. The other thing I wanna tell you about driving under the influence, the first time you drive under the influence, if you're convicted, mandatory jail. What does that mean? You have to go to jail for at least 1 day. The second time you do it, it's mandatory 30 days in jail. If you commit a third driving under the influence, it's a felony and you can go to prison. So it's very, very serious. But even for the very first time you commit a DUI, it's 1 day in jail.
We have a person in here who got their license suspended for what, Mr. Mason?
Oh.
What were you doing on your vehicle?
Nothing.
Yeah.
No.
And you make it look like a real gun. Well, now, when you walk in that store, you know it's not a real gun. But the cashier doesn't know that. He thinks you have a real gun. So now you put that person in fear for their life. Somebody might walk in there, a police officer might walk in there, and you're waving around this gun that looks like a real gun. So now, you put everybody in danger because they think you have a gun. So the law's gonna punish that, even if it's not a real gun. You understand that? You can commit an armed robbery. Armed robbery is a robbery committed with a weapon with a water pistol. Now, the penalty isn't as severe, but it's because you put people at risk. What if the cashier from behind the counter thinks you're gonna shoot him? And they pull out a shotgun, and they don't shoot you, but they mistakenly hit the person next to you and they die. Or a police officer comes in, sees you, and shoots you, or tries to shoot you and misses you. You get in a gun battle in there. Don't do these things. Use your head. A simulated weapon, a fake weapon, or making a real weapon look like a fake weapon, you're gonna go to prison for those crimes every time.